Steve,
Yeah.
how are you, Boychik?
I was going to ask you, can you think back to an earliest memory?
I can think back to, you want me to get eclectic?
Yes,
And you
100%.
want me to say to you about the cover of a Kabbalah that I read. I looked at the cover and I said, what? What? The Exile. It said The Exile on it. And then I said, wait a minute. The Exile, they certainly are not talking about this world, is what I metaphorically realized. They were talking about, I can only go by William Blake, okay? Because that's just a popular name that pops into my head. William Blake and New Jerusalem, okay? And the whole metaphor that we are actually light, L-I-G-H-T, beings, and that the exile is the exile from the light, not from the freaking, I'm sorry to say,
Not the diaspora.
Israel, not from Israel,
Right,
my
right.
friend, not from the world of Jerusalem that we kind of take for granted, we'll say,
Right.
in a regular manner, in a common sense manner. Okay, I realized, wait a minute, William Blake, I read, years ago about New Jerusalem, and I'm saying, wait a minute, what's the, and he did all of these great, like, to me, poems and stories, the tiger burning bright in the forest of the night. And then I said, wait a minute, he's talking about metaphors. He is like a esoteric analyzer, an esoteric poet, like many poets wrote their stuff esoterically, like composers like obviously Beethoven, Mozart. These guys, they, in many instances, we're not talking about the world of what, the phenomena of living in this life, but like Beethoven, with, the restricted hearing and all that, which also Helen Keller, who could not hear, I remember reading in an autobiography or a biography where she said she saw the light, she saw the idea, I think that either Aristotle or Socrates or one of the ancients, Greeks, talked about the idealization of this world, the universe, in a pure light form. I remember her saying that she saw the vision of the world. And I, kind of, it goes back to when I knew Bert Schomburg, who was the painter. Bert Schomburg did a bunch of Roger Corman movies, particularly the one with Vincent Price, where you see all these portraits in the house of Usher. Bert did the house of Usher, and Bert was a dear friend of mine. Actually, it didn't start out he was a dear friend. We lived up Laurel Canyon back in the day, in the 60s, and he would kind of walk down Kirkwood Drive, which took you down to Laurel Canyon. It was up in the hills.
Sure.
And so I lived across the way. I had a little cubby hole of a place, and he had like almost an artist's studio. Not big or anything, nothing pretentious. He had a studio apartment that looked out onto Kirkwood Drive, onto the street, and I lived right across the way somewhere. So Bert would, when I first met him, you know, I was an actor, young actor, very ambitious, extremely ambitious. And I was going to do A.B.'s Irish Rose. I had gotten a loan and I was going to play A.B. in A.B.'s Irish Rose. I was going to put together a show or something. I was very, as I say, very into being famous. And then Bert said to me one day, I don't know, I drove him or something, and he said, to be is the answer. And I said, I don't know, what do you mean to be? To be is the answer. And so I pondered that, and I couldn't figure that out for a while. And there was another friend who was very famous, George Clayton Johnson, who wrote Logan's Run, who wrote The Twilight Zone, who wrote many, many things. And George, at that time, was like George Carlin when George Carlin was very straight looking, very like shirt, tie, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so that was an era. And Bert would always draw and things like that, and he painted, and he talked about a club that he had with George Clayton Johnson called the Frankenstein Inn in Redondo Beach or something like that. And that they were kind of hippie-ish, but not George Clayton Johnson in appearance at that time. Bert Schomburg was kind of very unique and different, okay? So somehow I got into conversation many times with Bert, and Bert would say things like, you got to be here now. You have to live in the present.
Right.
Gurdjieff and Uspensky, he would talk about Gurdjieff and Uspensky. He'd say to me, did you ever read In Search of the Miraculous? I said, I don't know. What the hell is that, In Search of the Miraculous? Or The Fourth Way? I said, you know, that makes no sense to me. I remember I read Autobiography of a Yogi once, and you know, I liked that. I mean, that was really good vibe. And Bert would say, this is a science. This is a science of being. Now, maybe I might have heard somewhere along my antennae that Sartre might have did a book about being. Maybe with Simone de Beauvoir, I'm not sure, but he wrote, you know. But anyway, so Bert would get into these heavy philosophical things, and I didn't understand what the hell he's talking about. And he would always come up with, remember yourself, always remember yourself. And I say, what the hell is that? So he gave me a present, like, I think it was In Search of the Miraculous and The Fourth Way, these books. And in it, they talk about man, you know, in the sense of man having many eyes. I do this, I am doing that, I am doing this, I am great, I am not great, yada, yada, yada. So this was all enigmatic to me in its essence. I didn't know what was coming off here. And then I was reading, and then I would drive the car. I would drive my car, and I would say to myself, I got to remember myself, not knowing what the hell I was saying. And then Bert would always say, never do it in your car. Never say, I have to remember myself in your car. You know, you're driving a car, you drive a car, you know?
Right.
So eventually, you know, back in the day, you kind of used Mary Jane, I shall go on to say. In other words, there are many aspects of Mary Jane, okay? Mary Jane for kicks. You know, Mary, you know, oh, hey, hey, wow, it's groovy and all this. And there's also the Mary Jane of who am I? What am I doing here? Which I'd never heard of. I never knew that. I mean, I never.
These weren't conversations.
Pardon me?
These weren't conversations of that era. And anyone who was talking like that before the whole hippiedom thing exploded must have been sort of hard to really grasp until the whole culture caught up with it. Because here you are, just out of the Navy, traipsing around Hollywood,
right?
And really, sort of the old studio system still existed up until a certain point. So, you know, I've seen headshots of yours, you know, when you were a young actor, before hair started getting long and before people were tuning in, and that must have been exciting for some and unsettling for some. How was it for you when all of this started happening? Because this is one of those events.
It was part of those events that changed my whole life in a lot of ways, because prior to that, I was lucky in the sense that I was an attractive guy, I got to admit, or called attractive, okay?
Still
not a pretty boy, not a pretty boy, but an attractive guy from New York, a street.
A swarthy guy.
Swarthy guy, right, who was playing Indians, Native Americans, and would come out with dialogue like, actually written dialogue, him got papoose, white man, no good to Indian, that kind of stuff, which I got cast in many different aspects, but a lot of Native American stuff, and Chicago kids with Lee Marvin, a couple of those shows, M Squad, a couple of them, opposite Lee, actually, I had the feature.
Right.
And also with Burt Reynolds and Tom Laughlin. I think I mentioned that to you.
Sure, Tom Laughlin.
The show. That was called The Teacher on M Squad.
What was he like?
We weren't in Chicago. Like? We shot it at Republic or Review Studios, which later on became CBS Television Center, which prior was Mary Tyler Moore Studios.
Sure. But
originally it was Republic Pictures that became Review Studios. So somehow I got lucky and I was in something with Ann Baxter and a couple other kids and a very pretty young lady. And we were teenagers, supposedly. And we harassed Ann Baxter in a telephone booth. And so, I mean, that was, I was in young Hollywood, and Dennis Hopper I would see at parties, and also actually we did magazine layout, and he was supposed to be the, great and this and that, and he, not that I'm taking anything away from him, he was probably ahead of his time, but he had a lot of conflicts. He was under contract to Warner Brothers, and he would do kind of unusual things right before they were going to shoot, and it would drive certain directors crazy, what Dennis would do, And so
he was an artist too. I mean, he was.
Yeah, he was. But but at that time, I was self-involved. So I was up for a contract at Warner Brothers. I worked on a scene with a young lady. We were doing a scene from Waiting for Lefty about written by Clifford Odets, about a cab driver and his girlfriend and the brother who doesn't want them to be together. So I kind of lived by the rules of the game, which I discovered later, screw those rules, throw them out years later. Because when I was doing the scene, when I was going to do the scene at Warner Brothers, they said only 3 minutes you're allowed to do the scene. And this scene was a very intense scene. I had rehearsed with this young lady for quite a while. And the agent I was with, the wife, was a member of the Actors Studio at that time. And she directed us. And she worked on very psychological approach to an acting scene, this particular scene. And so doing the scene, and I in rehearsals, I remember at her place, at the agent's wife's place, we would both get very intense and cry and this and that. It was really a very underneath the dialogue. In other words, this lady director worked underneath the dialogue. Forget about the dialogue. Working with, say, a problem. Like a problem could be, forget about you're an actor. Concentrate on your eyes not blinking for, say, 3 minutes before we go into a scene. And your dialogue is something like, hey, honey, I smacked into a beer truck today. Boy, was that crazy, huh? In other words, not even thinking of the lines. She would say, don't think of the lines. Just work on the problem. You can't blink your eyes. And and obviously it was Actors Studio, kind of Strasbourg, Kazan kind of stuff, which I knew nothing about. Right. My idea of emoting was, so I'd say, hey, you son of a gun, I'll knock your head in and this and that.
Right.
Arbitrarily. This was like a different approach and an internal approach of truth.
Did you like that?
And that truth is trying not to blink your eyes caused a frustration. In other words, so not knowing anything, but just believing in what the director told us to do, I worked that way, and it was amazing stuff that was happening. However, I was not that equipped to fully understand the commitment. So when we did the scene at Warner Brothers, and I thought it was like 3 minutes, I said, our 3 minutes are up. And I blew the whole thing, like that. I was very naive. I thought I knew everything in a way. I thought I knew me. In other words, pregnant pauses in acting was like taboo, I thought, because an actor has to say the lines. You got to say the lines. Make sure that the lines are said, because that's how TV is, and that's how everything is. You got to do it. And the way this lady was teaching was, you are the product that you want to create, and you create it with the freedom and liberty of an artist. But I wasn't prepared for that, even though I experienced it.
Well, you grew up watching things like you'd seen On the Waterfront. You knew that Brando was an Actors Studio grad, and I'm sure that his mumbling must have appealed to you in some way.
Yeah, I did Brando. I did Brando and Rod Steiger. Charlie, look, you could, it was not your night, kid. It was not your night. And I would do the inflections of Rod Steiger.
Night.
Right.
But okay, but let's go back to what you were saying about being in the present and certain things starting to take hold in your young head. And the whole world is changing. But let's go back further than that. Who were you before coming out to California? And were it not for the Navy, you might not have ended up out there.
Right. I was very fortunate. My mother had a breakdown when I was young, and my brother got shipped off to a boys' a home, like just a boys' home by institution.
Sure.
And I was, I think, old enough where I could stay home. And I was crushed by what happened to my mother and my brother being parted. And my father liked to work a lot, so he worked a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he would try to get me jobs, little work and all that. However, I hung out in the pool room, and I knew a lot of, I don't know, I was not on a good track for a while.
What neighborhood were you living in?
A place called Brownsville, Brooklyn. And I went to a yeshiva prior to my mother's, no, I think after my mother broke down. I went to yeshiva, and it felt like I was in prison, really. I mean, it was very tough, even though I got my first job in show business in a yeshiva.
Yeah.
I sang for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I auditioned for a guy who had a haberdashery pants store on a main avenue in Brooklyn, in Brownsville, called Pitkin Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
And I auditioned. I did an Orvino Malcano, and I had an alto voice. And so I was offered, would you like to sing for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? You'd have to go to Williamsburg, stay at the rabbi's place. There was going to be a cantor and the whole 9 yards, and there was a choir of, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 of us. And I remember I was at the rabbi's, and I made for a couple of days, I think I made $40 back then.
That's a lot back then.
Yeah, for singing, and so that was really my first paying thing. And then I somehow I got out of the yeshiva and went to public school. And a friend of mine from public school, Stanley Burson, his name was, his father, I think, owned a linoleum store. He and I thought we would be a duet. And so we would go to NBC or CBS to try and audition. And we were like, 12 or 11 or something like that,
How long was the train ride to get into Manhattan?
Yeah, sure. The IRT, you take the subway and you go in there and you go to Rockefeller Center or whatever and try and get an appointment, which you couldn't get anyway. And so, I mean, those were the days of Leo Fuchs, who was a big Yiddish actor who would be, I think, off Broadway doing a stone for Danny Fisher, actually.
Jan Murray, wasn't he? Or Jan Pierce? There was some famous cantor. I believe it was, I don't know, continue, sorry.
Yeah, no, but no, the point was that I, thought, I mean, I wanted to be in show business then. I think I was so influenced by movies. Movies always made me feel good when I went to the movies, and certain comedic characters I felt no threats. As a young person in Brownsville, I felt a lot of threats from different gangs. There would be gangs. Now I'm giving you a kind of a mixed bag, because the time frames have shifted.
That's okay. No, I'm rolling with it.
So, and then I remember my father, who worked at the post office at that particular time, he moved to another area that was a Gentile area. And I went to a public school where I found lots of anti-Semitism
In Brooklyn.
and like I I was young. With my brother was 3 years younger than I was, and so they would always, it was like a nightmare in a way. I mean, I didn't do anything. I was a kid and innocent and all that. And one day I remember on the street that we moved on, where my father moved to because the post office was nearby, that he could have the route there. I remember on that street, I accidentally kicked over a can of paint. And I think I might have been 10 or something like that. And being called a Jew bastard. Yeah, which kind of traumatized me. And then my brother and I being picked on by other what you would say today, we're not mainstreamers,
Right.
So, and also I was looked upon, my father would always tell me how to watch out for my brother, younger
Right.
brother. So I had that burden on my shoulders, and this and that and all that kind of stuff. And then, in my later teenage years, when I didn't like being pushed around, so I joined the PAL, Police Athletic League, and I started boxing. Not that I was good. I smoked, and I did road work, and I would work out in the gym with a lot of African Americans. They weren't called African Americans then, colored guys,
Yeah.
black guys. And also I remember a black Hebrew who I would box with by the name of Rudolph Corney. And he was a middleweight like I was. And he was very kind of sharp. And I was in the ring with him. The coach, an Irish coach, Mickey Donnelly, put us in the ring together because Donnelly wanted to see if I could be part of the representation of the Golden Gloves team from there. You had to be 16 and up. So I got in the ring and I hit Corney, and he shook his head, and I heard him, and that was the biggest thrill of my life. I'll tell you why. Because Rudolph Corney later became Golden Glove champion, middleweight division, and I lost my first fight. And I was the only guy out of the precinct that lost the fight. There were maybe 5 fighters. I was a middleweight, and I was so frightened and scared. My underarms were sweating, and I was just frightened. Ridgewood Grove, a big audience. My father was there, and his girlfriend was there. There were a lot of people were there. And
what year was this? Like mid-50s?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was Brownsville like? Because obviously you hear about Murder Incorporated and stuff.
Yeah.
How would you describe that place? And
I discovered later on, actually firsthand, on St. John's Place, where this Brownsville area was, St. John's and Saratoga Avenue, there was a mixture of guys. We used to hang out at the pool room, and right next door was the Palace Bar, and the billiard pool room was called the Palace Pool Room. Okay, so I hung out with guys. It was just before my boxing days. Okay, and so there was this little guy. He was an Israeli, but he was American, and he would walk on his hands on the street, and he was built very well. And this guy, Marty, or Lefty, they called him, challenged the little guy to a weightlifting thing. And there was there were a couple of weightlifting places, and one guy who sold weightlifting equipment was Dan Laurie. That was his name, Dan Laurie, Laurie, who was also at one time on the big circus on CBS in the 50s. Later. But back then, he had a little shop or a little weightlifting place on Pitkin Avenue up in a loft, and I bought weights from him. But anyway, let me get back to my Israeli buddy. So it turns out that this little Israeli guy beat Marty, or Lefty, in the weightlifting thing, diminutive guy, and the taller guy who thought he was hot shit and all that.
Right.
However, it turns out that Ike Berger was the little guy's name who won the Olympics for weightlifting. And I think as a featherweight, he won the gold and he got 3 silvers throughout the years. And he lifted, in the Olympics, I think for a featherweight at the 136 or something, he lifted 286 pounds. So he was, and years later I ran into him one day and I lost track, but I understand he's still around.
Really?
On the planet. But he was a champ, and anyway, so how I got into boxing was there was a prize fighter, a Jewish prize fighter named Georgie Small. Georgie Small, and there was another fighter too called Harold Green, who had beaten Graziano. I think they fought 3 or 4 times, and he beat Graziano. Harold Green did, and I went to public school with Harold Green's brother Eli. But anyway, Georgie Small used to come into this bar that took me as a kind of like adopted me, because I hung out. Like I say, my mother was garnished and father was busy, no brother, and this and that. So in this bar, I would hang out, and Georgie Small would come in on occasion. And then I would follow his career. And then one night he fought a man, it was on television at St. Nicholas Arena, who was a contender for the middleweight championship. His name was Laverne Roach, who had fought a Frenchman maybe a year before and got a terrific beating from the Frenchman, Marcel Sedan. Marcel Sedan beat the crap out of Laverne Roach. Laverne Roach was on his comeback trail, and he fought the man who later became my friend, Georgie Small, at St. Nicholas Arena, and Georgie killed him in the ring. Yeah.
Actually killed him.
Killed him in the ring, yeah.
Oh my
and there was a big investigation, DA and all that, and Georgie had to go to the DA. They found him not guilty. Georgie, was in the ring. And so Georgie hung up the gloves for a while. And then I hung out with, I somehow got in with some people who are nefarious people in the rackets. Okay, I'm a young kid.
In and around Brownsville, right?
Yeah, right. In the rackets, some alumni of maybe Murder Inc. I don't know.
Were these Jewish guys, Italian guys?
Jewish guys,
really,
and Italians, but Jewish guys and older guys, and also I used to sell fruit at the fruit stand with some of these balabutas who would hang out in the pool room. But anyway, so Georgie Small was going to make a comeback. And there was this guy who was a big shot with a cab company. I don't know what, but I know he had a place called Smallwood, in Smallwood, New York. Oddly enough, Georgie Small had nothing to do with Smallwood. In other words, didn't own it. So somehow I was in good with Georgie, and also the people that hung out at the bar owner, Harry, and these other guys, they said, hey, Georgie, why don't you take Stan up there as your companion? You know, road work and all that, because they knew it was kind of a rough little life I was leading, you know? So I went to the Catskills to this wonderful cabin we had that was donated just for training for Georgie to make his comeback in the Catskill Mountains,
So
where he
beautiful
was
up there.
training. So we would get up in the morning, do road work, and eat the good life and all that kind of stuff. And it was an amazing experience for me. And then when we'd go into Monticello or Monticello, which was a very famous spot in the Catskills near the big hotels and all that, I remember the owner of the bar restaurant saying to Georgie, does the kid need some work? We can put him in boxing at Grossinger's maybe, and I, if that would have happened, I probably, it would have punched my head off or whatever,
Did you go to Grossinger's? Did you ever go to the hotel there?
No, I didn't go there. No, I didn't go there, but I knew about it.
Sure.
I went to other hotels like the Laurel and the Pines was very famous.
It's gorgeous. I just went up there for the first time over the summer.
Oh, really?
I have a cousin who lives around there. I was in Monticello and Bethel, and because I was coming from Woodstock, New York.
Yeah.
And it's the Catskills are I fell in love with it up there. It's gorgeous.
Oh, yeah. It was when I was a young man, and Liberty, New York, there was a place called Liberty at one time, but Smallwood was a place that at one time no Jews were allowed, So, Georgie was a Jewish guy. I think he had been divorced. Then he remarried later on. But anyway, but here was the upshot of Georgie Small. Georgie said to me, I want you to meet, I'm going to introduce you to the strongest man in the world up in the Catskills. Okay. So I'm thinking Charles Atlas.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
Right?
Yeah.
97-pound weakling.
Yeah.
So the upshot of the story is that eventually we go to this farm near Woodstock, maybe, or Woodbridge or Woodstock. It was either one of those places. And a short little man with the longest arms you ever saw in your life, wearing a yarmulke.
That's the strongest man in the world.
The pass. And he said, they used to call me Canvasback when I was a kid as a nickname.
Canvasback?
Yeah, can't get knocked on your ass.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
So so he might have said Stanley or whatever, but I want you to meet Joseph Greenstein. Joe Greenstein was known as the Mighty Atom. That was his, and he used to bend spikes in carnies, and he would pull cars, and there was a book written about him. And so he bent a spike before my eyes. He put it between his teeth and bent it further. And he complained that at one of the shows that he did, somebody did a bad thing to a spike, and he got like a crack in his molar, But and he also used to wear chains where he would break out of chains. This little Jewish man with a yarmulke would pass. Okay. So it turns out that Georgie Small, the fighter who, had killed somebody in the ring, was a disciple of the Mighty Atom in his carnival days. When the Mighty Atom went on the road or whatever, wherever they went, Georgie was a young guy, and he would learn the feats of strength that the Mighty Atom had. And so it was, I mean, it shattered all my illusions about what a strong person was. You know, I'm a kid growing up, yeshiva, the gangs, the this, the that, and then me wanting to be a starker, a blotter, you know, to, you know, kick the crap out of anybody, and then seeing this humble little man with the yarmulke and no, a benign man, totally benign. So
The
that
Mighty
was
Atom.
a big emotional thing that and you know, this and that, and eventually back to the old neighborhood, back to things that weren't good for me, and I had to leave. I had to get out of Dodge, so to speak.
Was your dad not, did he just not have any idea how to control you, or was he just not around, or was he working?
He was always working, and he was generous with me and my brother, but my brother was taken away from me, so I was alone.
Mhm.
And I was, and traumatically, I was very destroyed, as the inner me was.
Sure.
The outer me could, you know, I had, fortunately, I had, my father was a very charismatic guy. He was a very charming guy. Later on, he became a jockey's manager at Belmont Racetrack. He got my brother a job there when my brother was, you know, my brother joined the Merchant Marine, this and that. So my father was very good to me. Unfortunately, my mother was the one that suffered greatly. But
Did she come out of the hospital? Did she ever rejoin the family?
no, she never did. She lived in a halfway house, and that's where she passed away. You know.
What was her name?
Well, her name was Sally, and she was a beautiful lady. And I think I posted photos of her on.
I've seen pictures. Your dad was a good dresser, a very neat looking guy. With equally cool name, Ruby.
Yeah, Ruby.
Yeah.
Ruby the letter carrier. Ruby the you know, like I say, and he got my brother a job at Belmont. So you know, as I say, my father was always well liked, you know. And my father expected too much out of me. You know, he thought I'd be a movie star and all that. In other words, bless his heart, but that isn't what life is about. Life is about finding your own voice for those who seek, for those who, there's a price you pay.
Mm-hmm.
If you want security, you do work in the post office for 20, 30 years, and you get that money, and you have that kind of security.
Sure.
But if you're, say, you feel there's something missing, then you're in trouble, because then you're out in search of the miraculous.
Some people don't think as deeply like that, though. Some people don't go. Some people do not go as deep to want, you know, they don't have that existential angst. And for some, and I'm jealous of those who just kind of do what they're supposed to be doing, and they do it, and they don't ask questions, and they don't bemoan anything.
Right.
And but then those aren't the people that I want to be around. You know, those aren't the interesting ones. So you're on this little path, and is that when you join the military? Is that when you go into the service?
Yeah, I joined the military to get out of New York, to get out of Brooklyn, because I knew mobsters. I knew I wanted to be an actor. I always wanted to be an actor.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Hollywood movies had psyched me up. And when I got out here, this and that, I got a little lucky and did some shows, but I was always told, go back to New York where you could really develop your craft, and it was the real world in acting, you'd go to Equity and this and that,
Sure.
which I joined out here. I did.
Yeah, it was all out there. All the New Yorkers were coming west.
That's right. That's right. But however, my first wave or whatever, doing teenage movie things, and I still had no, I had no support in I had rubber legs. Thus, I had, in other words, if I would love, a woman could capture me, and excuse me, that would be good enough for me.
Sure.
In other words, ambition, forget about it. I found love, da 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 da. And I did a play like that for a guy named Abe Polsky called An Umglick Lives in Brooklyn. When I was young, out in LA, when I first got out there, and I got lucky. Abe later on did a play on Broadway called Devour the Snow, about the Donna Pass cannibalism thing. But he also did several movies. One was The Baby, which I did the artwork for, and I was in, but much of me cut out, although there is a scene with me and Ruth Roman. And he did a wonderful thing on a gay person in the military. He worked with somebody else, and there was an actor who I commiserate with on occasion on Facebook, who was the star of that movie. I forgot the name of the movie that Abe wrote, and which was like a new kind of thing on the gay kind of guy trying to beat the draft kind of a thing. And anyway, Polsky did okay, and then I fell into writing out here and all this kind of stuff.
Well, did you find it interesting that you were gravitating towards the brainier people when you probably had no use for them as a kid or any education? I mean, obviously, there's something that was inside of you that just maybe the art. You at least you grew into yourself.
True, but in the Navy is where I met the guy who also helped change my life, my friend Steve Hayes, who was a petty officer, and they flew him onto the ship I was on, the Philippine Sea, and he had come off another carrier, and he was like a third-class petty officer, which is like a sergeant, okay? And he was from Brooklyn too. And he loaned me, I remember, $10 that first night. I went to his, to the, our bunk. I was in a crap game, and I said, hey, I discovered he was from New York and Brooklyn. Hey, you're from Brooklyn too? He said, yeah, sure. Can you loan me $10? I want to shoot crap. Gave me $10. I won, and I gave him his money back. And then eventually, I would see Steve. We'd work on the gas crew. That's when I was on the gasoline crew. I had a gas tip tanks of F9F jets. And Steve would always have a book in back of his jeans, in back of his navy blue dungarees, like Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, Ulysses, the Brothers Karamazov. You would have these. I say, hey, man, like I've seen. And also when we would be in the coffee shack, because since he was a rated petty officer, third class, there's third class, second class, first class, and chief. So he was third class at that time, and he knew everything. I mean, he was a very bright guy, and there were a lot of good old boys there that were anti-New Yorker. Steve wasn't Jewish. He was very much into Hemingway and into, you know, James Joyce, et cetera, Salinger, you know. So I say, what do you got all them books for? I said, you know, like a schmuck.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, where do you come off reading them books? And he would say, Stanley, you know, in Brooklyn, we had libraries. So he kind of straight, that was a very profound statement to me. In other words, hey, schmuck, you know, go to a library, you get a book. But these were his own things that he would always be reading, you know, and then when we would be in the coffee shack, that would be on the flight deck of the ship where the planes would take off, but there would be little like rooms on the side of the flight deck where guys would have coffee and all that. They'd lock their, you know, you'd lock the hatch or whatever. And so he would be listening to like Beethoven, Mozart, Rachmaninoff, and the hillbilly guys. They said, hey man, I want to hear some Ernest Tubb. And Steve would say, get your hands away from that fucking radio, man. We're listening to Beethoven's Fifth, you know?
Right.
And so he had the juice. And as it turned out, we became dear friends, you know, and I would, you know, and he would always be reading. And eventually, you know, like he would mention a book to me or something like that, like Catcher in the Rye. I said, what the hell is that about? You know, and then I pick up Catcher in the Rye and you know, eventually, and then the music, you know, the long-haired music. You know, I was into Tony Bennett, Sinatra, whatever, all that, Joni James, all, you know.
Vic Damone.
So I got hooked on the music. I'm saying, wait. And by the way, I also played clarinet and saxophone when I was in public school. My father got me music lessons. So I had some knowledge, but I was still a miscat. Is that the word, a miscat? I was still, you know, when my mother got sick, my world collapsed, okay? So studying music and all that, you know, it all diffused, everything.
It was a deeply impactful bad experience for you. I mean, it's, some people don't recover from a parent losing their mind. I mean, especially when you need them the most. You had to raise yourself, it sounds like.
Right, I did.
Where was boot camp?
Bainbridge, Maryland. And that was, you know, also that's where I met the first Jewish Southerner I ever knew, a guy named Cohen from Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia. I never knew. Oh, and also I was, you know, I was picked on for being not only a New Yorker, but being Jewish. They say, the good old boys from like Biloxi, Mississippi and places like that say, I ain't never seen a Jewish guy. I mean, how come you in the Navy? I mean, how come you doing what we doing? You know, you should be, you know, a big shot. I mean, you guys got all the money and everything right. All of that stuff. So, which I was used to as a kid when I lived in a Gentile area, you know, like a lot of, you know, stuff that just was crazy, you know.
Was the discipline too much for you, or was it?
Huh?
Did you take to the disciplinary aspect to it? Because it seems like you were, you know, you were unruly as a young man.
I was unruly as a sailor too, and I don't know. The gods might have been looking out for me at one time. I swear, because as I look back, you know, I'm lucky I made it through boot camp, and I'm lucky on the ship when I had gotten into a couple of fist fights that I think about it and I say, gee, boy, they could have, a couple of guys could have got me and thrown me overboard, which I, never crossed my mind back then. But now in this era, I think about it, So,
Yeah.
and also Steve, my friend Steve Hayes, he kind of, I admired his intelligence. I got to take this off.
Do you know whatever happened to him?
Oh yeah, he's still my buddy. He's still around.
Oh, wonderful. Where is he
in
live?
Ensenada? Huh?
He's in California?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah, he's been
amazing.
married a couple of times. He has a bunch of daughters, and he's still in California. We're not as close as we used to be. I mean, obviously, but he was. And then we were roommates for a brief period of time until he got married. He got married first, and he got jobs. He worked for NBC and everything like that. And he never went to a university, but he was a walking university. His kids, his daughters, one of them got in the 99% percentile for Notre Dame, and got the scholarship and a teaching thing for other students. So, I mean, he was a brain, and the woman he married the second time was a brain. And so, I mean, not far from the tree.
How did you get so interested in, because all these, you wrote a book about the Blacklist by interviewing several individuals, and you could talk
Abraham
about
Polanski, Robert Lees, may rest in peace, who was murdered,
Oh, wow. And also John, he was a Chicagoan, I think.
John Randolph.
Yes.
Yeah, the actor John Randolph.
Because obviously you weren't as.
No, I wasn't around I didn't know who it was.
But it was happening when you were a kid and when you were probably
that's
in the
true.
name. Yeah. So what interested you in that? And tell me a little bit.
I got lucky. I joined the Writers Guild of America. When I sold the script somehow and got into the Writers Guild, and I was invited to all these events with blacklisted writers, and who happened to be friends of mine, and even Marvin Kaplan said he was blacklisted, the actor. He was once my collaborator too.
The character, the short guy, right?
Yeah, Marvin. He had the very thick Brooklyn accent, and his father was a doctor, and the father ran his doctor's office in Brooklyn, I think, or New York. In the apartment. One room was the office, another was the examination room, and the others were the bedrooms. Back in the day, you could do that.
Wow. He passed away, I think, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he was also head of AFTRA at one time. And Ed Asner, was a dear friend of mine.
Yeah, tell me about him. I mean, obviously, you talk about him a lot, and he was very generous with you too, which is
right.
Equally endears me to him, or him to me, because he was always very supportive of the things that you tell me about your relationship with him.
Well, my friend Arnie invited me down to a reading at this West Side Jewish Community Center. This lady, a very wonderful lady, whose name slips my mind, but she was a real nice lady. She would put on these readings, stage readings with Alan Feinstein, people like that, and they would read different projects. And so my friend Arnie invited me down to see a reading of with him and Ed and some other people. And I went down there, and I went to Ed, and I said, Arnie introduced us. He said, "This is my friend Stanley Dyrector," and I said, "Ed, Mr. Asner, would you like to do my TV show? I have an interview show." And he said, he looked at me and said, "Yeah, sure, sure." Okay, so what happened was, like about 2 years later, I hadn't talked to him. I hadn't even bothered to call out to him. I was doing the show, and then Arnie was having another reading down there at the same West Side Community Center. And I go there and I see Ed and I say, "Mr. Asner, I don't know if you remember me, but would you like to do my cable TV show?" And he said, "I told you I'd do it 2 years ago, but you never called me."
And he was really famous by that time.
Yeah. Oh, he was famous. Yeah.
I mean, this was after Lou Grant. This is after Mary Tyler Moore.
Yeah. So, and then I remember I took him in my car with Arnie Weiss, who introduced us. Arnie used to do a play with Ed in Boca, Florida. I forgot the name of the play, but about Harry Truman and his partner, and how the partner, Harry and Eddie, it was called.
Oh,
and
yes.
how Eddie, the partner, the Jewish partner of Harry Truman, tried to get Truman to recognize Israel as a state, etc. So Arnie Weiss and Ed would be doing that show in Florida and places, whatever. So, but anyway, so I remember first time like picking up Ed, and Arnie's, Ed's in the front seat, and Ed says, "Where's the coffee? Where's the donuts?" As we're driving to the studio. So that was my first fatal error, but he, putting me on.
Right.
And we did that show. And then eventually we did more shows. And then my book came out. Oh, my book. Yeah, I said I was with my wife, Joyce, and I called Ed up, I remember, and said, can you have lunch with us? And so we had lunch at a place called Jinkies on Ventura Boulevard, or Coringa Boulevard West, it's called. And so I said, "Could you write a little something about my book and all that?" So he wrote the intro, the forward to my book, Shedding Light on the Hollywood Blacklist, Conversations with Participants. And he just wrote it on a napkin. And so, eventually it went into the book, and the book got good reviews from you.
I read it. I love it.
And I interviewed great people, and Robert Lee's, Bernard Gordon, who wrote the movie that Ronald Reagan and Nancy were in, about the ship. God, I forgot the name of it. But anyway, he was a communist. Remember, everybody was a communist in the book. And Bernie Gordon with Kvell, he relished that Ronald Reagan was reading his love lines to Nancy from a communist. In other words, just the idea of it made him Kvell, okay? And also, oh God,
wasn't he the head of wasn't he president of Screen Actors Guild, Ronald
Reagan? Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
one time he was. Yeah, I think he worked with the big corporations though, and really didn't much.
He wasn't going to help the commies.
Right. But anyway, so
how did that experience impact you? Because here you're talking to people that you obviously admired, but you were learning a lot about something. Did you know that the Blacklist? Do you remember the Rosenbergs? Do you remember these things that were happening?
No, I remembered it, but I didn't know all the details of things, and I didn't know that there was a first group that went to Washington, and
Right.
that there was a second group. And the people I interviewed were the second group, like Abraham Polanski, Robert Lees. And Robert Lees said that when Sterling Holloway was being interviewed by the committee, and they were there, Robert Lees, and perhaps Polanski was there at the Senate, QAC, House Un-American Activities
Sure.
Committee, that Sterling Holloway said, "Oh, there were a number of us in that party. There was Abraham Polanski, there was Robert Lees, there was Holloway just blew the whistle on them." However, later on, years later, Robert Lees forgave Sterling Holloway because Sterling Holloway wrote a book about his sailing days, a sailing book, and about how he regretted blowing the whistle on his friends. Saying they were naming names. He named names and he regretted it.
I always think of Gary Cooper when he said, I know, I don't think it's on the level. Like that was his something that he's like,
Right.
from what I know about it, it's just, I don't think it's on the level, which was not the deepest thing.
Robert Taylor was like, Robert Taylor was very anti, and mind you, but but also look, I interviewed Andy Fenedy, who wrote the John Wayne movie, the Western, and named it after John Wayne, Duke.
No kidding.
A Chisholm. And Andy Fenedy produced The Rebel with Nick Adams, a TV series about a Southerner, Nick Adams, who's really from New Jersey or Pennsylvania. But he also, did Chisholm, which made him really, I guess, one of John Wayne's best friends. He said, Andy told me, Andy was on the right, so I did left, I did right. So look, I'm doing a show, and I really tried to be apolitical, even though I was very sympathetic to the guys who were left wingers, because I kind of leaned very liberal, and I understood. I mean, when I heard them speak, when they said, "Hey, look, why is it a crime? We wanted women to be able to get equal rights.
Right.
We wanted Black people to get equal rights. Why is that? Why was that wrong?" So they made very profound statements that really touched me. And I said, "Hey, hey, they put their life where their mouth was," and so that was very touching to me. And also, one of the funny things I remember in the book, Norma Bosman, who I think she's about 101 or 102 now.
Really?
Yeah, she I remember she told me that her husband Ben, she and Ben, by the way, they later on left America and moved to France and lived in Paris next to Picasso and a lot of the intellectuals. And so Norma was saying that there was going to be a meeting when she was living in LA up Sunset Plaza Drive, which is a main drag off the Sunset Strip. And that her husband, Ben, who was a very prodigious screenwriter, and they all kind of, or Ben worked for the guy who ran the Paramount overseas, kind of, I'm trying to, fascist Spain. They had a studio. Philip Jordan hired Bernie Gordon to run his company in fascist Spain. Okay, but I want to get back to the story of, and Ben Bosman wrote big films for Samuel Bronston, but that was under Philip Jordan's auspices.
Samuel Bronson, is he the one who wrote El Cid? Is he a
Yeah,
writer?
well,
Yeah.
actually, what's his name wrote Ben Bosman, who also wrote He Who Must Die, the movie, not the book. The book was written by Nicolo Kazantzakis.
Okay, so Bronson,
Christ the Crucified.
who direct? Because I know that name.
Wills Dasson directed, who was married to Melina McCrory later on. But I want to get to the point of Norma Bosman and Ben Bosman when they were living up Sunset Plaza Drive. So this blonde-headed, lovely-looking lady comes up to their place. I don't know how they knew her. And this lovely lady says, the FBI and the sheriffs are waiting on Sunset Plaza and Sunset. They're going to come up and they're going to raid you and arrest you. So it so happens that that person that told them that piece of information, which prepared them, I think, to split, was Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's in Norma's book too, Norma Bosman's book. But she, anyway, so also I remember when I interviewed Abraham Polanski, who wrote Body and Soul with John Garfield.
Sure.
And wrote Force of Evil, and also later on was taken off the blacklist by the guy who ran Universal and directed Bobby Blake in that Tell Him Willie Boy Was Here. Anyway.
That's sure. Well, wasn't Odette's, he was sort of controversial, wasn't he?
Odette's was very controversial. A dear friend of mine, she was Susan Harrison. Back in the day. Susan Harrison was the young lady in the Burt Lancaster, Tony Curtis movie, where Burt is a critic. What the hell is the name of it? Well, anyway.
I'm not sure, but I love how Burt Lancaster talks. Perfect.
Oh, yes. Perfect.
Yeah, just like,
right.
All right, we'll do this.
Yeah. So anyway, look, I'm here to talk about my new play, one-act play called The Welsh Matchstick, Johnny Owen. And I saw the fight that he had with Lupe Pintor. This is what the play is about. It's kind of my Casey at the Bat play, where I was at the Olympic Auditorium in 1980, sitting ringside for Lupe Pintor and Johnny Owen fighting for the Bantamweight Championship of the world. And so it's in poetic and prose form. I don't even know if I'm prepared to even read any of it, but I'm looking and I'm saying.
Well, it's firing me up to read it. And I have not read it because I haven't had the time to sit down. I've got a 10-year-old daughter who's home on vacation right now. So it's not as easy. However, continue, because I want to hear about that, and we'll talk about the play, and then but I want to cut it off soon. We could do another chat because I'm really tired. It's because I'm starting. It's 11:45 my time.
Oh, okay.
But listen, Stanley, I knew what I was getting into because we've talked before, and I don't get tired listening to it. But it's usually earlier in the day.
Yeah. So, my friend, have you ever seen my paintings from the movie The Baby that Abe Polsky produced?
I have not.
No? Oh, well, I have some paintings from that movie with Ruth Roman. And So I just, actually, I'm in their DVD. Oh, also here's another play I wrote right here. I don't know if you could see it. It's, well, no,
Let me see. Let me
can't
see.
see that. Wow, it's a play called, actually, it's something Ed Asner did for me. And it's called Second Time's a Charm. And it's about a person that's in love with his friend's wife.
Okay.
And he's always been in love with her. And Ed did a great job, not as the Lothario. The Lothario was our friend Arnie Weiss, who Ed did Harry and Eddie with a long time ago. But that's so I don't know if you can.
I love that. I love what Ed was a really good friend to you.
Oh, Ed and I and Arnie and Stage, or yeah, First Stage was the group I was with at one time, and we did a charity event that Ed read Abraham Polanski, and I read me, and what's his name was in the audience. I found out later. The guy who had the lead in Home Alone, not Culkin, not the Culkin guy, but the
John Hurd.
John, yeah, he was in the, Arnie told me, he was a fan of Ed's.
Oh, wow.
And so, he was there. I mean, I was, so proud. I mean, besides doing something with Ed, but Ed was a mensch.
He certainly was. So tell me, when did you write the play, The Welshman?
The Welshman, over the years. In other words, it was originally called the Championship Fight.
Mm-hmm.
And what it was when I had gone down to the Olympic Auditorium, as I say, back in the day, got ringside seats, and what's his name was down there? The guy who was in the conversation. Remember who had the lead?
Hackman.
Garfield.
John Cazale?
Garfield.
John Garfield. Yeah.
No, Alan Garfield, not John Garfield.
Alan Garfield.
Alan Garfield, whose name also was Alan Gorowitz.
Yeah.
But he changed it twice, I think. He came out as Gorowitz, then he became Garfield. And then, he passed away of COVID at the Motion Picture Country Home.
Really?
Yeah.
He wasn't that old. I mean,
he wasn't. But he had a stroke like about 8 years ago, 9 years, maybe 10 years ago.
What an actor.
And he was over there, and he used to be a fight fan, and he also wrote for I think the Herald, when the Herald Examiner was in LA at that time. He wrote a sports thing. And he was a Schwab's guy. Schwab's was my hangout at in Hollywood later on.
Which location?
Pardon me?
Which location was that?
Oh, the Schwab's was on the original Schwab's on Sunset near Laurel, between Laurel and Laurel Canyon, kind of.
Was it west of Laurel on Sunset?
Yeah, west. Okay. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was.
Like closer to Westwood, right? Like kind of on the way.
Well, there were others. There were several others that sprung up later, but the Schwab's brothers, they were very classy guys. Unfortunately, age had creeped up upon them, and also there were a lot of people that thieved. Strangers would come in there from. Also, like I believe I saw in there one of the victims of the Hillside Strangler, the guy who, yeah,
Really?
a lady that they had kind of a nickname for her. And I remember her going in and out of that place there. And, you know, later on, they got those two guys, the brother and the cousin or whatever, or the cousins that were the Hillside, that would pick up these girls. And
I think the Schwab, I met the Schwab children because in Beverly Hills, there was a like a small pharmacy, and they were
right. That's right.
And I worked with this fantastic lady, beautiful older woman whose father had worked at the original Schwab's, and I met her when I was working at the LA Opera selling tickets.
Really?
And she told me story. You know, her father was there, and then I went to that to get a prescription over at the at that Schwab's, and I told them, they're like, oh sure, I remember her, yeah, great. Say hello. But
yeah, well, you know, the Schwab's were really a class act. You know, I have to tell you, I really, you know, they would never let an actor go hungry. They would always
wow.
like, you know, I mean, this is back before the, you know, we're talking about, I think they closed in the 80s.
Sure.
But I mean, they had a long reputation, and Sidney Skolsky had his office there. He was a very famous gossip columnist, also producer of the Jolson Story, and an intimate friend of Marilyn Monroe's, and he didn't know how to drive. So I remember I gave him a lift once. And also there were so many stars that would go in there. I mean, and writers that probably many people would never know about, and some would know about, like, oh golly, boy, I mean, it just, I remember sitting at the counter with Mama Cass, you know, and Roy Scheider. I think I might have mentioned that, I don't know. Roy Scheider, and I was talking loud, and he was trying to read the New York Times, and he got a little pissed off at me and gave me a Roy Scheider look.
Oh,
you know,
goodness.
which
Wow.
was not which was not a cool look, you know.
No, it's I could see it.
Like, I want to beat the shit out of you. You keep it up, you know. And but it was, I mean, the guy who wrote the screenplay for Man for All Seasons. No, not Man for All Seasons. The other one. There was a similar movie.
Not Bud Schulberg.
No, this guy used to write Elvis Presley movies.
Oh, okay.
And
definitely not Bud Schulberg.
Well, he got, yeah, well, but he had a deal with Paramount where I said, how did you get to write this famous movie, which will come to me after we leave? He said, I wrote all these Elvis Presley movies and they made money. And I said, I want to write the screenplay for such and such movie. And they gave it to him. And it was, I'm not sure if it was an award-winning Eddie Van Anholt, Anhalt, Eddie Anholt, I would see in there, you know. God, you know, talk about people. I mean, there were so many. You can't really imagine. Shelley Winters would go in there all the time. People like Peter Finch would go in there. Yeah, he was staying at the Beverly Hills Hotel, but he would go to Schwab's to shoot the breeze with the regular actors. You know, he was not some piss elegant Englishman that was a great Shakespearean,
Right.
you know, that you should admire. In other words,
That's what was so fascinating. I mean, you could run into I think I ran into the actor Ben Cross. You know, he passed away not long ago. He wasn't sure. I mean, you would just run into the strangest people. I mean, I remember seeing Alan Arbus walking around,
Oh yeah, sure.
and I, you know, I'm a young guy. I mean, I was born in 1970. I mean, in comparison, but I'm glad I got to see some of that, some of those
Yeah.
strange characters that still exist. But I
Yeah.
probably have a romantic view of the era that you're talking about.
Well, a lot of them don't exist anymore. You know,
Yeah.
actually, you know, a lot have bit the dust, and you know, all the envy that I might have had went down the tubes because I'm here and they're not.
Yeah, but you're not the same person. You know, you're a different. You're a more evolved Stanley Dyrector. You're evolved. You're a Pintel Yid. You got the fire. You know, that sort of that keeps you going.
You know, I appreciate what you're saying, and I try to have the joie de vivre. In other words, you know, I think about you raising a kid and all that responsibility, and realizing, you know, what the trenches are. I mean, you don't know what the trenches are until you're in it. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like with any perhaps hardship that I may have or that I knew somebody had. And then going through the hardship yourself. I mean,
It's relative, Stanley. I appreciate that, but sometimes it's I think it's relative. I mean, you yeah.
Yeah, but you're going, what I'm saying is you're going close to the soul. You're going to your soul. You're going not to an exterior, you're going to the most vulnerable aspect of yourself. You're not going to get any more vulnerable than a daughter or a wife.
I tried that one. I tried a wife before, you know, that didn't quite work out, but you know, these things happen.
But, you know, being the breadwinner and being responsible and I never knew from that. What I'm saying is I never knew. I was a carefree kind of guy, and you know, hey, you know, who wants grief and aggravation?
Yeah, but you've had tough times, as I'm sure anybody has. But were you able to? What's your secret? I mean, do you have a philosophy that?
Yeah, it's rebirth. Rebirth. It's consciousness, and it's realizing that it's being in the present. But you know, you have to think, I have to do it tomorrow. I have to pay that bill. I have to do this. I have to do that. So it's probably what is it, bilocation or trilocation or many location. And then to get to the inner resource of who I am. I mean, am I the guy that was born just, you know, flesh and blood to Ruby and Sally? Was that it, that I maintained the heritage? Or was there, maybe I suspect a little more? Wait a minute, why are you reading Socrates? Why suddenly you're reading, wait a minute, wait, or Dostoevsky or Aristotle? Why suddenly, wait a minute, wait, these guys, wait, wow, what about the mystic Ramakrishna? How about God, all these minds that Aldous Huxley, people like that? Well, what did they have to say? Well, what is this? Oh, Stan, look, nobody ever came back from the dead. They don't, you know, they don't know. What do they know? You know, look, you only live once and all that. Well, hey, what if you go deeper? What if you say, wait a minute, I've heard all of this crickety crack stuff, But then I found the original jazz within me that says, wait a minute, man. Screw that. Screw that. I don't buy that anymore. I don't buy that. I'm tending, wait a minute, what? Socrates? What? Plato? Well, they have fruit cups and all. No, hey, wait a minute. Let's Apollo. Why? Aphrodite. Why? What was the sun god? Wait, Ra in Egypt, in maybe Greece. I don't know. Rome. The sun god. Indians, Native Americans, Indians. When they went, oh, and as a kid, I'd laugh in the movie. Oh, look at it. Oh, they going, blah, 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 blah. Then discovering later on in life that was, in essence, a soul, that they were in communication with their soul, with their innermost being, that was never realized by me as a kid. And then one day, maybe accidentally, hearing somebody, oh, and I say, wait, that person just exclaimed something from their being.
You're right.
In such a inner feeling, intense and truth. And me as a kid go, oh, not knowing the ignorance and how they were slaughtered. And how, Black people were slaughtered, and how Jews were slaughtered, all that. But getting back to the essence, finding the essence and realizing, hey, I got to create my own jazz. And finding the notes here and there and say, hey, wait a minute, man. Wait a minute. Hey, I like to think more in poetry, in poetics, I don't want to, how the heck do you know that you haven't been here before, man?
What about the Mighty Atom? What do you think? Do you think that he had any profundities?
Mighty Atom had many profundities. As a matter of fact, Dan Laurie, who I mentioned earlier, who I bought my weights from the first time, when I had a conversation, I'll never forget. I said, I met the Mighty Atom. I was looking for the Mighty Atom's address. And I called Dan Laurie because I saw an article somewhere that they knew each other or whatever, or I figured they knew each other. And Dan Laurie said to me, yeah, the Mighty Atom lives in Bay Ridge or something like that, or off Cropsey Avenue or something like that. And he had a lot of tricks.
What was his name again? What was the Mighty Atom's name?
Joseph Greenstein.
Gotcha. That's amazing. Well, Stanley, we're going to take this. We're going to do a part 2.
All right.
And I really admire you, and I'm glad to know you, and Happy New Year to you and Joyce.
Thank you very much.
And this
Let
is
me know.
Like our last conversation. It will plant seeds into my head because there's so many other things I want to talk to you about.
That was that. So, all right, let me go. I wanted to really get you up to date on my new thing about the prize fight.
Let's talk about that.
The Welsh Matchstick. I wonder if you can see what it looks like over here.
I can.
Can you?
Yes.
Can you actually see the Welsh Matchstick?
Yes, I can. And I could see, your name, and it says prose tributes. Wait, a play. What's the line right over your name?
The line over my name is a poetic prose tribute.
Great.
And I want to read you. I'll read you this page, who I dedicate this to. Okay? My dedication. I dedicate this play to my friend Georgie Small, a professional middleweight boxing contender who I trained with in the Catskill Mountains in Smallwood, New York. I was in my late teens and a wannabe Golden Gloves champion. Georgie Small was an inspiration to me. He helped to open my eyes to the importance of a person's character rather than their physical strength. I would also like to dedicate this play to my dear friend, the renowned 7-time Emmy Award-winning actor, the one and only, the incomparable Ed Asner. He has always been an inspiration to me. So that's, and the characters, I won't go into, but let me go into a couple of paragraphs. So we open up with some what's the word? Some Welsh music and Mexican music, okay? Little instrumentals.
Sure.
So the Welsh Matchstick came from across the sea, certainly to fight and not to flee, with hopes of winning another championship title for him in Wales, you see. Johnny Owen came to win the bantamweight title from an olive-skinned bruiser named Lupe Pintor, painter in English. Newspaper pictures show Johnny's face, pale and white, his body spindly with long ostrich legs. His virginal expression was kind of deceiving, because he wasn't in LA for receiving. Oh no, he was here to slug it out, not punk it out. No, almost undefeated, he was Merthyr Tydfield's pride and joy. His fans spent their hard-earned cash to cheer him on to victory in the city of angels. They came from across the sea. As always, his proud father was in his corner, nursing and training him throughout his fighting career. For your info, not every young prize fighter is skillful enough to whip the bejesus out of a bunch of old Blighty's best fighters. But you see, dear ringsiders, Johnny was yet an unknown in the US. Until now, he'd never fought anyone with Lupe's tough reputation. Lupe Pintor came from Mexico to whip the crap out of this pretty boy, Lord Fauntleroy, AKA Johnny. You see, because like Johnny, Lupe needed the do-re-mi, the moolah, the dinero, like all fighters do. Pintor was there to play. No, Pintor was not there to play. He was there to get the pay. Lupe, known for his focus, stalked his prey like a lithe panther. I rest my case on this. Whoa, but wait. Johnny was not just some tin horn palooka who was going to let Lupe's pre-fight jive to bug him, intimidate him. No way, Jose. You see, Owen was known for his rough and tumble ways, displays of jabs and hooks, mixing it up. Definitely not a Humpty Dumpty suffering a great fall, y'all. Johnny never played it safe in the squared circle before, and you could be sure he wasn't going to do it now. Seated ringside in a dark suit, white shirt and tie, yeah, regular square was I. I heard through the grapevine this bout of fisticuffs was going to be a real rumble. Somebody was going to tumble. This ain't no Muhammad Ali in the jungle. This was the Olympic Auditorium in downtown LA. Lots of rabble-rousers were present, none expecting to yawn tonight. Yep, that was the buzz, cuz, the take from the inside line. Wow, I said to myself silently, unconsciously mustering up strength through my parched lips. Inferiority complex. I am impressed, for here I am tonight, Shazam, me, seated beneath the ring ropes. Holy cow, if the guys in Brooklyn could only see me now. Their boy Stan the Man was making the big time, sitting there and media dudes from all around the globe, from who the hell knows where, in suits and ties, dressed more dapper than I, and some were sleazy too. Some were dressed like the FBI. Made me wonder why. Were they looking for spies? Damn, saw newsmen with their big old cameras snapping away. Maybe they'll catch a couple of shots of me, coast to coast, grinning like a Chessy cat. Tuss, can you see me blushing? Ha! Suddenly my reverie gets busted. Again, when someone yells, hey, there's going to be a big badass fight on TV tonight. Yay! Then I heard another big bad roar. Could it have been a lion in the zoo? No, it was the crowd. I'm telling you. So turning my noggin, I see the fighters, two dudes shuffling down to the ringside. First, Johnny Owen, the skinny malink in a red robe, red trunks, his name blazing on the robe's back with whales beneath. Then Lupe in white robe and white trunks, his name on robe too. I soon realized their weight seemed awful light. Johnny more so, feather light. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. You know what I mean, hot diggity dog. Oh yeah, these guys are bantamweights, but can they hit? An aha moment happened, hit me like a brick. Fireworks go off of my noodle. Don't gotta let fighters' weight fool you. A dynamite stick packs more than a mean wallop, and so does a firecracker in a kid's hand. Gotta excuse my philosophy, because it's New Yorkese, not some freaking disease. I eat cheese, if you please. How about these knees? Ask them bees. Now, let me tell you about me. At 16, boxing in the gym, police athletic league, I caught a mean left hook from a flyweight, made me shake and tremble, grumble, and almost tumble. Felt drunker than a skunk drinking a vodka martini. Why, to this day, in my Brooklyn neighborhood, they still call me Canvasback. Now, how about that? Yeah, so you know I ain't jiving when I say bigger they are, the harder they fall, because it's what's writ in boxing law, you all. Now, the fighters, the warriors, they've entered the ring. The crowd is chanting with terribly loud off-key voices. Hey, Lupe, mata el vagabundo. Hey, Johnny, kill the bloomin' bum. Followed by boom, 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 like loud, big bass drums on repeat. I could have swore I felt the cracked cement floors of the old Olympic arena creaking from armies of miscreant fans rising and stomping, wanting for things to begin for blood's sake. I was edgier and more nervous than anyone else in the joint. Why? Was it me who was going to fight? Them fans was the enemy. A bunch of Roman Gawkers watching Pete's thrown to the lions at the Coliseum. My stomach got tied in knots, butterflies alive in me, all taking flight, but can't get out. All kinds of fright this night. Why? I kept asking, was it a portent of a superstition? Me? Don't know. You ain't never going to see a fight in no zoo, for sure. You know, if you think about it, proves animals are more civilized than we. Then Johnny came forward in the ring, nodding his head proudly to the crowd, to every side of the ring. And Lupe also showed his sculpted presence in the same manner to his fans. Now, the referee motions the fighters to the center of the ring. You could tell by their eyes they was ready to swing. I got a real good look. Johnny was chalky and tall, kind of bony and neat, arms like tapered steel springs, and a nose surprisingly Greek. He wasn't called Matchstick. He wasn't called Matchstick Johnny Owen for nothing. A Welshman looked like a needle standing sideways, but a tough cookie, so said my bookie. Johnny's never been knocked off his feet. He's going to be pretty damn tough to beat. Now, this other guy looks like a bull. What's his name? Pintor? Yeah, wouldn't want to meet him in a dark alley. Yeah, no way. Yes, Lupe Pintor was sizably shorter, but much broader compared to the warrior who looked like a needle. Pintor athletically trim, olive skin, handsome, shoulders of a fullback, eyes, hot coals of fury. And the way he held his big mitts, I said, he looks like he can give you the blitz without playing tricks. Impatiently fidgeting, they did wait, listening to the ref's instructions like a couple of racehorses waiting to get out of the gate, pampered by trainers massaging their necks. They was like a couple of newborn babes in swaddle skivvies. The referee's ramble could be heard all over the joint, even in the gents' room, loud and clear. Even catch it where you bought your beer. He repeated the familiar phrases. Want a good, clean fight. Break when I say break. Protect yourself at all times. No rabbit punches can cost you the round. Now, come on, boys. Let's give them a hell of a fight. Back to the corners they went for silent prayer and for destiny's bell to toll. Lupe, the Mexican champion, makes the sign of the cross with lightning speed. I thought I saw the champ from Wales bow his head too. A holy rite in everyone's sight. Indian braves on the warpath, naked from the chest up. Two of the best, must be heaven blessed. These samurai marching into battle bravely, never gravely. Accompanying music was the bell as the roaring crowd began to swell while mariachi played off in the distance. I took a quick sip of my beer. Bang, the bell. They charged at each other, punching away. Johnny Owen was throwing jabs quick and fast. Lupe battled back. This was business. Where was the chariots? The fighters knew they were not there for a fling, cause fancy footwork and bluffs was goddamn rare with their brand of fisticuffs,
Mm.
Action Jackson, and championship fame, purses to be claimed. That was all part of this game. Loopy kept punching away, landing more than a few. Johnny likewise. These guys were there to slay, not to play, throwing punches in bunches like pistons plunging away. Ramrods were thrown. Bam, bam, bam. Leather smashing on bone. Oh my God, I cried out. It looked like these guys were made of stone. But round after round, the night got darker and darker. Loopy jabbed lefts and rights, countering towards Johnny's head, and swung to his gut too. But then Johnny got Loopy against the rope, swinging away. This was action through and through. Loopy didn't use no rope-a-dope, but got away as the rounds came and went. Father time ticking away. I thought I heard the TV guy say, looks like Johnny's winning this fight straight away. The Welshman was making a damn good show of his fisticuffs. But then again, I could have been wrong. It could have been the other way around, you know, with all that noise. Fighters battled away, snorting, sniffing, grunting, and punching. Whoa, they certainly were hitting hard. Loopy throws a left uppercut to Johnny's gut, followed by a right. Unfazed, Johnny keeps moving in closer, getting his lumps and not dancing away. Glad I wasn't in his shoes. I could see Loopy was looking to connect with her right to the chin. And you could tell he was pretty bright in this game, but his brawn took center stage, if you ask me. Johnny, more the classical boxer, jabbed away, throwing lefts then rights, stinging his prey. A classy fighter, I heard people say. He definitely appeared stronger than he looked, like a praying mantis, distinctive posture. A good lefty got to Loopy's chin, but not a respect from him. Conversely, Loopy was bullish, aggressively mixing it up. He kept sending Johnny the message. Yes, he was the bull, but not in a china shop. Loopy knew what he wanted and had a direction, mass destruction. With each round, he kept coming, slugging like mad. Left hook, right crosses, shots to Johnny's head, bombs to the belly, round after round. Loopy's sole goal was to knock Johnny out in a hurry, punishing him, bruising. Couple of drunks said boozing. Short night, give up the fight. All the while, Welshmen and Latinos cheered their bambinos. The spirit of the arena grew meaner and meaner. Christian, lion, Turk, and Greek, all those things not meant for the meek. Johnny's pale face turned crimson and gray. This was turning out to be a hell of a day. With mouse on eye swelling, Loopy kept getting tagged. That made him real mad. For this gringo knew his ring lingo and counted real bad. As they say on the streets, bad is bad. Johnny Owen was a handful, throwing, lefts and rights. Are we still on? Throwing lefts and rights. A few more pages. Loopy, never one to disappoint, aimed to knock out his lights. Wow, Loopy landed a right, grazing Johnny's chin. His lethal arsenal was in play today. In between rounds, handlers became priests, sprinkling water on brows, ministering moves to avoid defeat. My God, you would have thought the Holy Ghost was there. A crowd member got their kicks, setting off firecrackers, adding to the mix. Were those rifle shots? LAPD stood proud, but the culprit got lost in the crowd. The TV guys in the crowd were getting lessons on the sweet science. Newspapermen called it the art of prize fighting. British sports writer Pierce Egan, way back in 1813, called it so, as did A.J. Liebling. But Jimmy Cannon called boxing the red light district of sports. The fight was going smartly, Johnny taking blows but giving them. He was holding his own. Oh, there was a good shot he landed on Loopy's chin. Gee, maybe Johnny's going to whip his tail, pull an upset. But Loopy's still standing, brawling away. Odds at ringside favored pinned to 4-1. But Owen's fighting like a man possessed, throwing leather like mad. Yeah, sure, going to make him Welsh folks proud, I figured. Yeah, if Johnny whips him good. I heard he trained doing 9 miles a day roadway, even when not preparing for a fight, just for the hell of it. Boy, oh boy, that's a lot of running. Woo, I get tired just thinking of it. Hot dog, Johnny throws an unanswered left and a right. Whoops, Loopy comes back with a shot to his liver. Then Johnny, full of energy, throws a flurry of punches like mad. Oh, but Loopy lands a punch to Owen's kidney. He's still standing. How about that? Loopy smiled kind of macho, threw a little wild. This guy from Wales was as good as the tails. What did it take to make him a piece of cake? A good old haymaker to the jaw, hombre. A bantamweight championship was at stake. Round after round, undeterred, Johnny keeps throwing leather with those 8-ounce gloves. Loopy's face is getting peppered by Johnny's relentless strikes, blood around his eyes and nose. Then, when in close contact with Owen, bump! Gesturing to the referee like he was fouled by a headbutt. However, ref doesn't penalize. Loopy keeps driving himself relentlessly forward like a Sherman tank, looking to mow down anything in his way. The bell rings, ending the 8th round. I heard someone yell to the bookie, Owen's ahead by a couple of points. My stomach began to feel queasy when the 9th round began. Yeah, I was starting to feel kind of sad because now there was no oomph to Johnny's blows. He sure was throwing plenty of them, but was a damn feather trying to hit a brick wall? Wow. Now Johnny fooled me by attacking Loopy with a volley of direct blows to his kisser. I thought maybe he could cause damage by his sheer pounding, wearing Loopy out. Yes, Johnny's on his way to pull an upset. Yikes! Then suddenly, out of the blue, Loopy lunged, throwing a thunderous right that made Johnny go to the canvas. But Johnny bounced back to his feet. The ref did the count and sent Loopy back to the corner. Johnny shook it off, bleeding from nose and mouth. He nodded to the ref that he was still raring to go. Did that one punch turn the fight around? He returned to battle, putting up his dukes. In the final 14 seconds of the 9th round, the bell tolled. Quickly, Johnny's corner men ensued, escorting him to his stool. The boy from Wales looked kind of dazed, sitting, staring blankly. Crimson drops dripping from eyes and nose, looking harmless. Or was it a pose? Ah, sure, Johnny could be playing possum. You know, getting knocked, playing possum. Loopy's going to think he's hurt real bad, huh? But when the round begins and he moves in, he's in for a bam, because Johnny caught him in his web, like the spider got the fly, and now he's going to put him to bed, ending this fight of dread. Wishful thinking is a fancy not meant for moments of peril. Meantime, Johnny's handlers feverishly working on him, hoping to heal his wounds. The cut man stopped the bleeding. The trainer applied ice. His father whispered support. But somehow I felt a tinge of scorn when the raucous crowd cried out for more blood. They were hungry to see this bull destroy a brave matador in the ring. Thoughts of Hemingway's death in the afternoon sailed into my brain. The human family is supposed to care for one another. But where was our creator amongst these Romans? Doesn't the human heart incline itself to cringe at such carnage? Instead, I resorted to the callous approach. If maybe a sudden surge of strength would return to Johnny, yes, a Samson moment would ensue. This has happened in boxing before. That is Joe Louis knocking out Max Schmeling in their return matches first round. Boom! Louis was seeking revenge for his first fight with Max by getting knocked out in the 12th round. Louis got his sweet revenge. Yes, now I was rooting wholly for the underdog. The 9th, 10th, and 11th rounds came and went. Whoosh! Johnny was still throwing leather, mixing it up, vying for a championship world title for a place in pugilistic history. But where was his Samson? The bell tolled ominously for round 12 of this 15-round championship bout. I faintly heard it through the roars of the rambunctious crowd. Johnny did the sign of the cross within lightning speed, came out aggressively, courageously, swinging at Loopy, trying to force him into the ropes to get the advantage. Yet it struck me that Loopy and he were in a choreographed dance, nimbly partnered. Oh no, my senses got back to me. For goodness sakes, this wasn't the Joffrey Ballet's Nutcracker Suite. Two macho warriors, Loopy countered quickly with a barrage of blows, battling away from being stuck against velvet ropes. He forged forward, paying no mind to Johnny's combative bombardment. Johnny, no quitter, lion-hearted in the squared circle, throwing leather at the Iron Man and getting hammered by blows which seemed to come from nowhere. Johnny and Loopy were giving fans more than their blood's money's worth. Then in the midst of the 12th round, in the blink of an eye, Loopy's thunderous two-fisted attack knocked Johnny to the canvas. This was the second time Johnny had ever been knocked down, and all of it by Loopy's doing. Johnny got to his knees, and you could see he wasn't pleased. Getting up before the count of 8, he was ready to fight the bull, assassinate. You know, this was LA, and for Johnny, it was the biggest payday. You see, TV and the press were here all night for the play-by-play, blow-by-blow, sans the infamous Mr. Howard Cosell. Chalky Johnny was no slouch. He sure didn't fight out of a crouch. Valiantly tall and brave he stood, like some giant oak would. He went banging away with all of his might, so he could just stay in the fight. Johnny boy, someone hollered from the crowd. Another couple of lefts and rights, you'll have him dancing on a cloud. Loopy landed another devastating right, exploding on Johnny's face, and like a child's broken toy, Johnny Owen silently crumbled to the canvas. In a split second, the ref gestured, stopping the fight. The hungry crowd wanted more. Boos and hisses rained the floor. Johnny at first lay motionless. Then his arms flailed like a fish out of water. Johnny's people sprang into the ring. This wasn't supposed to be. They looked down at their boy in shock. How could this happen to someone who was a rock? A tough cookie, repeated my bookie. But he got the daylights knocked out of him. Johnny was a humble kid, never a gal in his life, except his mom, they say. No gal for Johnny to marry and have kids with. He would never have that in this world, you see. Wait, then I said, maybe this won't happen. Owen will wake up and fight again. Sure, there's a payback in the ring. I still stubbornly believe Swedish boxer Ingemar Johansson hammered champion Floyd Patterson to the canvas 7 times throughout their fight and took away a bleeding and reeling Patterson's heavyweight championship title. But friends, dig this. Patterson turned the tables a year later and knocked the devil out of Johansson to become the first former heavyweight champion to regain his title. Yay, maybe it'll happen again. Miracles. In the ring, urine was tossed Johnny's way. Lots of booing. Doctors came with oxygen. They all tried to get Owen to wake up. The Beatles, Let It Be, Mother Mary sailed into my head. Reality check. Nope, he was not moving. This was the end of the fight. And could it be Johnny too? Horrified sorrow spread from the auditorium to Wales while the hero was rushed to the hospital. Buried in Wales, probably telling tales. But to me, Johnny Owen was a champion true. And I'll never forget that night too.
Bravo.
Never forget that. Just made me feel lost. A piece of my heart gone. Hell, he was someone I could have shot the breeze with, having a beer with, shooting a game of pool with, or just a dude saying hello to. And then one more epilogue. Johnny Owen died after 7 weeks in the hospital, never to regain consciousness. The doctors recommended pulling the plug because he was brain dead. Johnny's father, Dick, consented, along with his mother, Edith, who'd flown in from the United Kingdom to be with her son. Years later, as was written in the press, Dick Owen visited Lupe Pintor in Mexico to make peace with himself and with Lupe. Dear audience, just as the last heroic Prince of Wales, Owen Glyndwr, is commemorated with his own statue, so is Johnny Owen in St. Tidfield Square, Diolch, Diolch, which means thank you. So that's,
That was beautiful.
A star,
That's sweet. Stanley, that was engrossing and it swings.
Yeah.
And engaging. It was fantastic.
Well, I would rather see a star,
it's visual, man. I saw the whole thing. I smelt it. I smelt the fights.
Yeah.
I smelt the sweat, the booze, and the cigarettes.
Yeah.
It was it was beautiful. When did you write that?
I've been working on this for about in other words, when I saw the fight, the Writers Guild had a poetry reading.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote a version of what I felt. None of this, really. Mm. I mean, the fighters came out of the ring ready to swing. You could tell by their eyes they were ready to swing. All that kind of stuff. And then through the years, I don't know, it kept getting in my way. It kept saying, I really want to say something about this, what I experienced,
Yeah.
And that night when I was at the Olympic, Alan Garfield was there, who later, who was also Alan Gorowitz.
Yeah, sure.
But like I say, through the years, and then I did it not this version though. You're like the third person.
Oh, I'm honored.
In other words, somebody, Oliver.
Well, yeah, what I'm going to do is I'll post it. I mean, this is a beautiful thing.
Well, I'm spritzing though.
It's okay. But Stanley, I need to go.
All right.
It was, we had a nice chat. We'll catch up though. I'm going to edit this and the other one. It's good. We'll talk anytime you want. Whenever you want, I'll talk to you.
All right.
All right. How's Joyce? How's Joyce? Okay.
She's still down below, and
Okay.
she's getting better, but she's got to use the walker and all that, and and in the bed, in the hospital.
Sure. Well,
But she's home.
send my best.
That's the best, right? And how is your little rascal?
She's good. She's out. This is my
How
night
old
off.
is she?
She's with her mom this weekend.
How old is she now?
10.
Oy, Asner.
Asner.
Unbelievable.
All right, boss.
Unbelievable.
We'll talk
All right.
soon.
All right.
Thank you for that. That
That's
was
what's
great.
good.
I
That
loved
was-
it. Bye-bye.
No, thank you. Okay.
Anytime.